The Broadway Business Improvement District has been around for a number of years, and Broadway itself, a very lively and entertaining street full of retail and lots of daytime and positive nighttime activity as well. Some of that in part due to the business owners and some of it due to the Board of Management and Executive Director Sarah Marchildon. So I've asked her to come in and explain a little bit about what's happening in the area. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Randy.
Good. Tell us a little bit about Broadway, Newtana, that general commercial area, and how it came to be where it is today.
So it's one of the original routes of Saskatoon, where Broadway was Newtana's original main street. It used to actually be a temperance colony when you go back to the heritage of it. And then today we've evolved into still being a very vibrant commercial place that people from all over Canada still come to visit. And way back when, about 20 some years ago, the business community got together and said, we want to make this place special, more special than just being a regular commercial street. And so at that time they worked with council to get the bylaw that makes us exist, which means that we can do extra special work and have this entity of our business to work on maintenance, to work on events and the community, and getting the community to be an exciting one to come and visit.
When you look at investment that's been happening there over the past couple of years, you've had some major changes just in terms of the scale and scope of the buildings, and still commercial. Yeah. But now you're adding some residential above, and I think that has to be exciting, that there's an influx of investment dollars both on Broadway and off the street. How is that being received by the community, both business and residential?
Well, I mean, going back to Broadway 360, which is kind of the plan where the city and the businesses and the residents got together to say, how do we want Broadway to continue looking into the future? And out of that has come some zoning implications and rules about that. So within that, we've got all of those parties involved and eager to see the development within a frame that will work for Broadway. So we're not going to have a New York tall skyrise tower because it doesn't fit. And so that zoning protects us against having things that won't fit. And so the community is happy to have arrived at that point rule-wise. And then the result of it, we're seeing we've got the new building on Main Street, which will house a whole bunch more retail at grade and then office above that. And then that's kind of, as I call, a Broadway 360 style building, potentially with residential components above that. So you go to the old Farnham block or the old Lydia's, and the rules are already written. We know that that's going to be that way as well, and the property owners are excited for that as well. So retail at grade and office above that, and possibly residential above that, and it will continue helping our community to be a vibrant one. The street level will continue to be that. Look into the windows and kind of shop that way and have that animation. And then above that, you have offices and residents who come down and shop Broadway and use the resources of Broadway during the day and night.
I think that's important to mention, is that I think Broadway was mentioned as one of the top 3 streets in Canada in terms of commercial business districts. It's also important to mention about the uninterrupted retail that can happen to make that successful, and there's a reason that exists. You mentioned Lydia's, and that's also a very good topic to bring up, I guess. But with the Broadway 360, what that's doing is kind of handing out the song sheet to the choir and saying, this is what we're going to sing, and everybody agrees to that. Yeah. What do you think in terms of the Lydia's Corner in particular? It's if you're heading south, it's kind of the first block. Any parking challenges? What opportunities do you see for that corner?
Well, for that corner, specifically, it is the excitement about the new building that will be built, the retail at grade and office above that. And yes, in the meantime, it's being used as parking, and we all know that parking is one of those issues that you can't not talk about in a conversation. And so, in the meantime, we'll use it for what it is and go from there. And I mean, in terms of having lost the history of that building, just to put it out there, I mean, yes, of course, the bid's disappointed to have lost that history, but every point in time is history, and we get to keep the memory of it, and we get to keep interesting points about it. For example, some of those bricks were taken to be able to actually make a Welcome to Nutana sign, and so those bricks will be from that.
So a bit of a commemoration and a welcome to the area, commemorating that building. And I guess that you also sit on the Municipal Heritage Advisory Committee, so it's good to have you there and representing that, because I think it's important to note that some of the older buildings are challenging to operate, and if there's some way to incentivize for the property owners to keep those buildings alive in their own way, we kind of don't have that toothless smile like we're facing in other pockets of the city. Broadway is always a hub for activity, and a lot of that changed about 20 years ago, you mentioned. Some of the nightlife and so on, that has to be good to see for business and the area residents, because they don't have to drive, or everything's right in their backyard, so to speak. Broadway 360 would have identified that. How do you see that nighttime activity as supportive of an active district for the evenings?
In part, the nighttime activity is those clients are supporting a whole other subset of the businesses on our street. And so there's definitely the daytime crowd, the nighttime crowd, and to meld it all together as our collective community is definitely an important piece. And I mean, certainly at all times of day, it's good to have that pedestrian traffic to basically be eyes on the street, and to make everyone in the community be feeling safe that, there's people around and there's nothing to worry about, and, you can crawl from one bar to another, for example, or, in the day, one lunch spot to another.
And well, we don't crawl in the day, we only crawl at night.
Fair.
I think that's right.
Yeah, sometimes you crawl during the day. So, I mean, all times of day is certainly an important piece to having the vibrancy that makes this feeling of safety for anyone coming to the street, whether it's the residents who live around and want to walk around regularly, or whether it's visitors coming to check it out.
What about cycling, bicycles, lanes, bike parking, and so on? Is that something that's been well supported through the area?
It certainly is something that's well supported by the community itself. We're working on getting it all implemented on the street. We are, by way of the way the city map lays out, we are a thoroughfare that has to continue having vehicles moving through it. And so I don't think that will ever stop. But that said, with the new protected bike lanes in the downtown area, we're really excited to see that succeed, and then be able to come across the bridge and come into our area to have that connection to downtown and of the whole community. We also have recently put up a few new bike racks. There are famous bees. And then we'll even have a few other different type of bike racks when the parking meter conversion happens. So it's definitely something, the pedestrian and cycling feel, it is what our community definitely wants and lives. And so to be always accommodating for that is something we look forward to being able to do more infrastructure towards it.
You touched on parking. Is that something that, I guess there's a finite number of spaces that you would have for on street and on the avenues, streets beside you. I would imagine a business has to have some accommodation for parking before they would start up or look at establishing there?
So with the buildings that exist, you definitely have to have a certain amount of parking. We all know that it certainly isn't enough for every employee that works in that building. And so it does commonly happen that our clients and our employees are parking out in that residential area around. And at this point, that is still something that's allowed and I suppose unregulated in that way. And from the residents' point of view, I mean, a lot of them and the Nutana Community Association will speak to the fact that when they bought their houses, they knew and they were excited to live next to the Broadway district. And so they knew that that was going to be a component of what was in the puzzle of having parking be a part of it. And so all those residents are being encouraged also to use their back lanes and their garages to be able to park and declutter so that customers to the district have spaces. But certainly there are within the commercial area the paid parking that works on the turnover and making sure that we've got that available.
I think that's given the choice of what Broadway was in its low day as opposed to its heyday. We'll take this any day.
Yeah.
Major events coming up for Broadway. It's always a hub of activity with lots of people coming. A couple of things coming up in the next little while for you.
Yep. So obviously the Fringe is coming up pretty quick, and that's a good 10-day long festival that brings a lot of different variety of animation. And then we ourselves have our Live at Lunch. So August 22nd will be that particular next day, where on that Saturday we'll put music on Little Stone Stage and we'll have the food trucks alongside. And then of course our biggest one is Street Fair, September 12th. And that's where from 8th Street to the bridge get closed down, and there's vendors and 10,000 people or more walking around checking out all the deals where these businesses are saving their best deals of the year for this particular event. So it'll be a lively hub for the summer season.
Business as usual on Broadway.
Business as usual.
Great. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.